My name is Gene Xu. I'm an ABC. That's American-born Chinese.
There was this thing known as the British Empire.
At the intersection between America and China, I'm concerned about the lack of cultural awareness on both sides.
They made an agreement with China that they would continue to occupy the territory that's now known as Hong Kong and for 100 years, and then they would hand that back over to China.
But I'm still optimistic about the future for my unborn son. Generational ABC podcasts are my conversations with my unborn son, one ABC to another, in my attempt to explain our world in context in order for him to make better sense of his world, which will be nothing like the world we live in today.
The current situation between America and China, between China and Hong Kong, between China, Hong Kong, and Taiwan, and then between Greater China and the rest of the world is really going to affect the world in which you grow up. Hey, little buddy. This is actually the second recording that I'm doing in one day, but that's because tomorrow your father is attending an event, and just in case I miss our morning vlog tomorrow, I'm gonna make an extra one today. One of the things that's kind of in the news right now is something that's going on in Hong Kong. So it'll be interesting to see what happens really in 10 to 20 years from now. But as you're learning your world history, you'll know that several, I guess hundreds of years ago, there was this thing known as the British Empire. So the British colonized places all over the world, and obviously they also colonized a lot of places in Asia. And then in, I think, 1897 was probably what it was, they made an agreement with China that they would continue to occupy the territory that's now known as Hong Kong and for 100 years, and then they would hand that back over to China. But during that 100 years, China went through tremendous changes. Changes in government, changes in leadership, changes in the political system. They fought a civil war in 1949. So in 1997, when Hong Kong was handed back to China, the people in Hong Kong enjoy a similar environment that we enjoy here in the United States, and that's what's generally referred to as a democratic system. Freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, a lot of freedoms that democratic countries have. And since China is not democratic, what was agreed is that for 50 years, there would be something that's known as the one country, two systems, where Hong Kong would still maintain its quote-unquote autonomy and be able to kind of govern itself. But what the Hong Kong people are not very happy about is that the Chinese government is slowly slicing away their freedoms. And every time something like that happens, people protest. And because you're still allowed to protest in Hong Kong. So what we want to hopefully not see again is that in 1989, there was also a protest throughout mainland China, in which a lot of students wanted more democratic reforms, and they just did peaceful protests. And then ultimately, there was this event in Beijing. They call it the Tiananmen Square Massacre, or this is what the Western media calls it. I'm sure China doesn't call it that. And now the similar thing is happening in Hong Kong, and there are millions of people who are marching because the government is trying to enact a law that allows extradition between Hong Kong and China, which means that the Chinese government can basically take any Hong Kong citizen if they don't like what they're saying online and bring them into China, and who knows what's going to happen to them once they get to China. So, this is kind of like what is currently happening right now, and you're not even born yet. So by the time you are born and by the time you're old enough to hear this message, we'll be much closer to the 50 years where it's no longer one country, two systems. And as we approach that, there's so many issues that are going to arise, whether it's going to be kind of a peaceful transition. What happens in Hong Kong also affects what happens in Taiwan. Even the Hong Kong protests now are affecting the elections that are going on in Taiwan. And again, I don't know if I'm talking to you as a little baby, a little boy, a teenager, or maybe you're listening to this as an adult, when you are in your 20s, looking back, because by the time you're 20, the world will be completely different than it is now. So I'm just trying to be empathetic to what world you're going to grow up in and what world you're going to actually try to build your life in as it changes at a really accelerated pace. And this pace of change is just getting faster and faster. So I don't know, I guess I'm optimistic that things will continue to get better, but the current situation between America and China, between China and Hong Kong, between China, Hong Kong, and Taiwan, and then between Greater China and the rest of the world, is really going to affect the world in which you grow up. And probably by the time you're old enough to listen to this message, if there's no kind of major war, China will be the world's #1 economy. And that'll be a paradigm shift that we as Americans will have to learn to live with. And hopefully we can all live in peace and harmony and collaboration and all of that stuff. So, great talking to you again, and look forward to seeing you when you are born at the end of the year.
Listen and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, SoundCloud, or YouTube.